Very tough day for America, very tough day for Texas, an awful day for the families of those victims. And my heart goes out to every single one of them. What we saw should never happen in this country. But this is why it is so important right now to stop with the politics and stop with the finger pointing and actually come up with some concrete ideas. Legislation that will work to help protect all our kids. We're going to discuss that. Plus, oh my goodness, the Federal Reserve coming in. Gangbusters, right? They're going crazy on these interest rate hikes. They're going to do 50 basis points and 50 basis points and more 50 basis points. That's what we learned from the Fed minutes today. What does that mean for your investments? What does it mean for the American economy? We'll get into all of it. Welcome, everyone, to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. Good to have you here. A reminder that portions of today's program are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest in precious metals than right now. So go to LegacyPMInvestments.com for your free investing guide today. Again, LegacyPMInvestments.com. Let's start first on this tragedy. I mean, wow. Just a devastating news out of Texas. 19 children killed, 2 teachers killed, all in the same classroom. I get a little bit sick every time I think about this, and I wish I wasn't here talking to you about this today. But I think that it's important we do. And it's important the nation have a conversation that's real in terms of what solutions can be offered. I get it, both sides are going to go all in for the politics of this. You got one side saying guns need to be outlawed. We need no more guns. That's going to be the solution to all of it. Well, they're wrong. And then the other side saying we just need to arm everybody, and then everything will be fine. Well, they're wrong too. All right? And so I for once would like to see some seriousness from our leadership in Washington, from the President of the United States, for goodness sakes, who could take measures to address this. Heck, he's got Congress, right? He's got the House. And he'd have the Senate on this one because Joe Manchin has been very much about finding realistic solutions that still protect our Second Amendment. We have a Second Amendment, okay? We're not going to throw out the Constitution. So let's work within the frames of the Constitution to find solutions that work. We have, it's very clear, a mental health problem in this country, which I believe, and if you've been watching some of these shows, including my discussion with Senator Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee just last week, I believe that big tech has been instrumental in actually making much worse. You look at the rise in suicide attempts and suicides, you look at the rise in eating disorders, you look at the rise in sort of hate, if you would, online, and Facebook plays a direct role in that. I would like to see more out of our government in terms of finding ways to address this so that our young people, our youth, are not exposed to such garbage as they are exposed to by big tech. Don't forget, this guy was actually on Facebook talking about this. So I would just ask, why did nobody see that? They've got all the algorithms in the world to, prevent me from talking about rising inflation. Why is nobody actually recognizing a lunatic, a horrible lunatic, when it's right out there for them to see? So our social media companies need to take more responsibility, yes. We need to take more responsibility as a society in terms of identifying these mental health problems. There's a lot more we could and should be doing on that front. And then we need to make our schools more safe. I don't believe that you need to go out and arm the teachers because, look, teachers should be able to teach, right? They don't need to be trained military operatives. You need security forces in some of these schools. And look, we pay a lot of money to a whole lot of things. We got to get our priorities right, folks. We got to get our priorities right and focus on our children because they are our future. So the ball is now in Joe Biden's court. He needs to do something about it because it's not okay for us to live in a world where our children can't feel safe going to school. Let me mention something that I think is worth considering. There's a lot of European countries that do allow guns, for example, Switzerland, and they don't have this kind of problem. Nothing close to it. So what are they doing differently? They've got more guns, actually. In fact, in a population of about 8.3 million people, there's an estimated 2 million privately held guns. Think about that. And yet, going back in some statistics I looked at all the way back to 2016, actually, this is data from 2016, there were 46 homicide attempts with guns. None of them were actually successful. So that's good news. But again, 2 million guns. And yet they don't have these mass shootings. So what's going on? Maybe it's more respect for the weapons. Maybe it's a culture of having that respect for the weapons that's passed along. Fascinating to me, every male in Switzerland is actually required to have a gun. They're given a gun by the government, and they have that between the ages of 18 and 33. The government trains them extensively in the use of that gun, but it's expected that they would have a gun in their home. The Swiss's motto being that they should be armed, but nonetheless not engage in that combat. But they want to make sure that everybody knows how to, at least the men there, 18 to 33, know how to use a gun. And then after 33, at 34, you are offered the opportunity to purchase that gun from the Swiss government, and you can keep it in your home, and you have to have a permit and all that stuff. So lots of guns in Switzerland, and yet none of the horrific things like we've seen here. They even have a shooting contest for kids, ages 13 to 18. Every year, a big national shooting contest or a rifle contest. In other words, there's a culture of appreciation, but respect for weapons. We seem to be missing some of that somehow, some way. The gun issue has been so politicized. The abortion issue has also been so politicized. Again, I look to Europe, where this isn't a hot button political issue. Each country makes its own decisions there. And, if in Poland you can't get access to an abortion, in another country you may be able to. And they have a system for dealing with this that doesn't become so raw, and doesn't become so political. And I would like to see us as a nation get to that, because we need real solutions. We can't be constantly pointing the finger at the other side and thinking that you wave a magic wand and you either get rid of guns or you bring more in and that's going to solve it all. No. It's far more complex than that. And so I'm disappointed in our country. I'm disappointed in our leadership. And I'm so sorry for those poor families that are going through total hell on earth right now, and all those kids in Texas. And all our kids in America that are scared and are worried. And so this would be a really great time for a commercial if I was on a traditional television show, right? I do want to get to the markets, the stock market, which of course reacted to the news that we saw out of the Federal Reserve today. The Federal Reserve is kind of in what I would call cleanup mode, right? They're trying to figure out how they can get this inflation in check. Markets actually welcome this. Not initially, they got really worried at first, but ultimately they ended the day up quite a bit higher. I'm still not sold. I'm telling you, I am not sold that we have seen the bottom yet, only because I do believe that we are very much at risk for recession. Look, the Fed is doing this really elaborate tap dance. And they gotta really tap dance pretty well, because what they're talking about doing is raising rates a lot, by 50 basis points, multiple times. Well, when that happens, you're sucking all that money printing that you did, you're sucking it back out of the economy in order to rein in inflation. Now, I hope that helps. It should help rein in inflation. But while you're doing that, you absolutely positively risk a recession for the U.S. economy. In other words, I don't want to repeat it because I have told you ad nauseum how frustrated and angry I am with what the Federal Reserve did. They really, really screwed up. And now we're going to pay the price. So I don't entirely trust the rally that we saw on the back end of trading today. I think that policies have consequences. And one of the consequences of these policies from the Federal Reserve is that you're going to be in a tougher a slower economic environment, which is why I keep saying to everybody, make sure that you're diversified, have lots of different things in your portfolio, make sure you're thinking through all this, because you want to still make money in this environment. And it's one of the reasons why I like different asset classes, not just stocks, right? And this is something that one of the wonderful sponsors of this program, actually Key City Capital, and I are very much aligned with. Diversifying your portfolio and looking at other kinds of asset classes. I encourage you to check them out. Charlie Dombeck, he's actually going to be on the program tomorrow with us. Charlie Dombeck from Key City Capital. And he has a lot of different ideas on how you can invest in real estate, how you can invest in asset-backed lending. There's lots of different things. In other words, it's a big wide world out there, and you need to get out of just thinking stock market, stock market, stock market. I mean, the stock market is great sometimes, right? It may be a little challenging in the near future, but you need to expand beyond that, and that's what he talks about. So go to keycitycapital.com/Trish to learn more. Again, keycitycapital.com/Trish to learn more. And you can also tune into tomorrow's program, because Charlie will be here on the program with me. Anyway, we need to fix our economy. I realize the Federal Reserve is trying, but you know what? It's too darn late. I'm sorry, guys. You should have done this way earlier. Now we're here hiking by multiple 50 basis point hikes. And that's going to have a suppression style effect on the economy, which I believe is going to head us into recession. I predicted 85% chance we're going to be in recession by the end of this year into early next year. I do think that oil prices are going to continue to escalate despite what they're doing, in part because of what's happening overseas in Russia and Ukraine. You've just taken all that oil off the market. I realize that the President of the United States wanted to constantly blame Russia for the hike in energy and food prices. But let me just say, you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, that hasn't even kicked in fully. It will, believe me, it absolutely will. But one of the reasons we're also seeing this is because this administration has refused to recognize the reality that we need to be energy independent. They think you can flip a switch and suddenly everybody's going to be driving a Tesla. Oh, they don't want you driving a Tesla. Forgive me. Elon Musk is on the naughty list right now. So they think that somehow we're all going to switch to EVs tomorrow. That's not going to happen. Crude oil at $110 a barrel, trading up about 1% in today's trading. That's going to continue going higher. I've predicted $130 by the height of the summer driving season. We could very well see it, because we're taking all that oil off the market, all that nat gas off the market. I'm not saying we shouldn't have. I realize you got to do what you got to do, right, in times like we're seeing right now. But gosh, to not have an alternate plan? I mean, guys, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? And again, this puts me back to really seeking safe havens in my portfolio. You want to make sure that you have some assets that are going to help you ride out whatever happens in terms of overall inflation issues. And sure, I get it. The Fed is hiking rates, and that should help the US dollar. But what's the long-term trajectory? Over the next 20, 30, 40 years, where do you think we're heading? We just keep amassing debt, and there's no real end in sight. So consequently, I like gold. I always have, I always will. It's just one of those things that, I'm not putting 100% of my money into gold, but I believe in, depending on your tolerance for risk and your trajectory, having somewhere between 1% and 5% of your portfolio in gold. And another thing you can look at is having a gold-backed IRA, which is what my friends over at Legacy Precious Metals do. So a gold-backed IRA, or buying the actual, some people really want the actual stuff. And in times of real strife, I get it, right? You just don't know. So gold is one of those safe haven assets that I think should be part of anyone's portfolio. Give my friends, if you're interested, a call over at legacypminvestments.com. You can call them at 1-866-589-0560, 1-866-589-0560, legacypminvestments.com. They'll help you figure this out. Again, if you want that gold-backed IRA, or you want the physical stuff in your home, or to a bank, right? You might put it in your bank deposit box there. So lots of interesting ways that you can approach this. But the reality is we're in for a treacherous time. I'm not convinced that the rally we saw in Wednesday's trading is really going to stick, only because of the fundamentals being as poor as they are. And when you have a Fed that's raising rates, well, what usually happens? You usually have a recession in that environment. And with a recession, you usually have a bear market. So just make sure you're prepared. And thank you again for subscribing to the show. If you haven't, make sure you do. Make sure you go to your Apple iTunes page or Spotify and download this podcast, subscribe to the podcast, hit the little alert button if you're watching the video, so that you get these videos delivered directly to you as they come out. And let's think about ways where we can be more creative to find solutions so that we don't see any more of these horrific events like we saw in Texas yesterday afternoon. We don't need that in our country. We don't want that in our country. So it's up to all of us to demand more from our leaders and our lawmakers so that they fix this and that we don't have our kids at risk. Thank you again for listening. I will see you back here on the show tomorrow. If you want, and you're watching this on video, weigh in with some comments and thoughts and ideas. Let's brainstorm, right? Because we need solutions right now. Absolutely. Let me know what you think. I'll see you tomorrow.